At the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve, my sister's scream cut through the music and champagne pops. "Oh my God, we're finished!" My mother hit the marble floor like a sack of bricks. My father stood frozen face white as the desert sand outside. 3 minutes earlier, he had been screaming into the phone, "Blair, where the hell are you?" I answered calm and clear. Did the family enjoy my gift? My name is Blair Harrington. I'm 28, and I run a high-end ceramics studio in Phoenix. To the Harringtons of North Scottsdale, the biggest real estate dynasty in Arizona, I've always been the failure who plays in mud for a living. They spent years reminding me I'd never measure up to my brother, the CFO, or my perfect sister. What they didn't know was that for the last 3 years I'd been quietly watching every dollar they tried to hide from me. That one box delivered at exactly 11:30 p.m. on December 31st changed everything. And it all started 10 days earlier when I came home early to help with the biggest New Year's Eve party the desert had ever seen, thinking maybe this year would be different. If you've ever had a family that looked down on you for choosing your own path, drop your story in the comments. Where are you watching from? I read every single one. Keep watching, because what happened next? Even I couldn't have scripted. 10 days before New Year's Eve, my mom's text still sat unanswered on my phone. "Come home early, Blair. This party's going to be the biggest yet. Everyone from the coast to the canyons. I need you here." It was the first time in years she'd asked for help like that, almost pleading. I stared at the screen in my studio, surrounded by half-glazed vases waiting for the kiln. Maybe this was her way of saying things could change. So I packed a duffel with a few changes of clothes, wrapped the handmade pottery piece I'd been saving for Dad, a sleek obsidian bowl etched with saguaro silhouettes, and hit the gas on my old Jeep. The drive from Phoenix to North Scottsdale took just under 2 hours, the Superstition Mountains fading in the rear view as the sprawl turned to gated estates and golf course greens. By late afternoon, I turned onto the long gravel drive lined with ironwood trees, the sun dipping low and turning the desert horizon into a blaze of orange. The house loomed ahead like a fortress of glass and stone, its flat roof blending into the McDowell Peaks. Even from the gate, I could see the preparations in full swing, crews in khakis stringing LED lights along the infinity pool edge, a rented fireworks scaffold rising near the outdoor amphitheater, and massive white tents going up on the back lawn for the overflow crowd. This wasn't just a party. It was the Harringtons' annual declaration of dominance, drawing developers from LA, investors from Dallas, and every branch of the family tree that mattered. I parked beside the 6-car garage, grabbed my bag and the wrapped bowl, and headed for the front doors. They swung open before I knocked, and there stood Maria, our housekeeper for 15 years, her apron dusted with flour from whatever she was prepping in the kitchen. "Miss Blair, look at you. It's been too long." She pulled me into a quick hug, her silver cross necklace cool against my cheek. Maria had always been the one bright spot, slipping me extra tamales when Mom wasn't looking and asking real questions about my latest glaze experiments. "Your mom's out back with the event planner. Come in, come in." I stepped into the cool marble foyer, the air scented with fresh sage from the diffusers, and something citrusy baking somewhere deep in the house. The place had been updated again. New abstract desert paintings on the walls, a massive copper chandelier over the staircase that probably cost more than my annual rent. It hit me like it always did. This was wealth built on land deals and luxury flips, every square foot screaming control. But I pushed the thought down, focusing on the bowl in my hands. Maybe Dad would finally hold it, feel the weight of the clay I'd thrown myself. Maria led me through the living room, past floor-to-ceiling windows framing the saguaros out back. Voices drifted from the kitchen, planners barking orders about ice sculptures and caviar stations. Mom emerged from the hallway then, clipboard in hand, her blonde bob perfect as ever, dressed in white linen like she was already posing for the party photos. "Blair, you made it. No hug, just a quick scan of my jeans and linen shirt like she was pricing out an open house. Guest suites ready in the East Wing. Your old room's under renovation, turning it into a home gym. We need the space for the trainers coming in. The words landed like gravel under tires. That room had been mine for 18 years. Walls I'd painted terracotta myself, shelves lined with my first lopsided mugs from high school pottery class. Now it was just space. I swallowed the knot in my throat. Sounds practical, Mom. I brought something for Dad. Thought he'd like to see it before the chaos. She barely glanced at the wrapped package. He's in his study with Ryan and the others, finalizing numbers for the toast speech. Don't interrupt unless it's quick. Her tone was all business, the same one she used on contractors who underbid. I nodded and headed down the hall, the bowl heavy in my arms now. The study door was ajar, a sliver of warm lamplight spilling out, and low voices carried through the crack. I raised my hand to knock, but my father's words stopped me cold. Blair needs to face facts. That mud hobby of hers isn't pulling in more than a few thousand a month, if that. We're doing this for her own good. My breath caught. I froze, hand hovering the bowl, suddenly feeling like lead. Through the gap, I could see them, my father, Jonathan Harrington, leaning back in his leather chair, silver hair catching the desk lamp. My mother, Diane, perched on the armrest, her clipboard forgotten. My brother Ryan, 34, and already the company's CFO tapping numbers into a tablet. My sister Nicole, 31, the real estate attorney who closed every deal with a smile and a signature. And across from them, a man in a crisp suit I didn't recognize. The financial advisor they'd brought in from Denver, his briefcase open to spreadsheets. It's perfect timing. Ryan said, his voice smooth as the scotch he swirled in his glass. New Year's Eve, full house, aunts, uncles, the whole network. Jonathan gives the speech about family unity. Then we pivot. Show her the projections, her studio, versus a real entry-level spot at Harrington Properties. Entry-level marketing, $75,000 base benefits. She signs the relinquishment right there in front of everyone. Dad nodded, steepling his fingers. Exactly. The intervention's scripted. Diane, you handle the emotional angle. Express concern for her future. Make it sound like tough love. Mom leaned in, her voice softening just enough to sell it. We'll say we've worried for years watching her waste that business degree on crafts. But we're here to help her get back on track. The advisor cleared his throat, flipping a page. Financially, it's airtight. Based on her apartment size and no visible assets, she's scraping by on $35,000 annually tops. Compare that to corporate stability. She'll see reason. And the trust transfer $28 million into the Cayman vehicle by quarter's end. Protects the core holdings from instability. He glanced at Ryan, who smirked. From Blair's instability, you mean? Can't have her suing for a bigger slice when she finally wakes up. Nicole laughed sharp and bright. Oh, please, remember Thanksgiving. She shows up in that thrift store caftan talking about her glaze firing schedule, like it's a board meeting. If we don't step in now, she'll drag the whole name down. The Whitman's girl just made partner at her firm, and our sister's finger painting pots for Etsy. My knees buckled. I pressed against the wall, the bowl clutched to my chest like a shield. They weren't just dismissing my work. They were erasing me, the relinquishment. That meant signing away any claim to the family trust, the one Dad had promised would be equal shares when we all turned 30. And the Cayman transfer, hiding assets offshore right under my nose. I'd suspected something off for years, the way Dad dodged questions about estate planning, but this was theft dressed as protection. Safeguarding from the daughter who dared to create instead of close deals. Dad's voice dropped lower. Once she signs, we move fast. Maria clears the old room that night. Tools, sketches, all of it to storage or donation. No more half measures. She commits, or she walks away clean. The room fell quiet, glasses clinking in agreement. Nicole raised hers. To fresh starts, for all of us. Heat flooded my face, a roar building in my ears. 28 million. My inheritance funneled away because I chose clay over contracts. The bowl slipped from my numb fingers, thudding softly against the rug. I caught it just in time, but the noise was enough. A chair scraped inside. Panic surged. I couldn't face them, not like this. Not with the truth burning holes in my chest. Backing away, silent as shadow, I turned and slipped down the hall past the kitchen where Maria hummed over empanadas, oblivious. My bag was still by the front door. I grabbed it, eased the heavy oak open, and stepped into the cooling desert night. The Jeep's engine turned over, soft headlights cutting through the dusk as I eased down the drive. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just the hum of tires on blacktop carrying me back toward Phoenix, the bowl still wrapped on the passenger seat like a lie I couldn't unwrap. I pulled over at the first rest stop off the I-10, hands shaking too hard to keep driving. The engine ticked as it cooled under a sky full of stars. I killed the headlights and finally let the tears come. Sarah picked up on the second ring. "Blair, it's 2 a.m. Where are you?" I could barely speak. "They're cutting me out. Completely. Publicly. New Year's Eve." She didn't waste time on comfort. "Tell me exactly what you heard." I repeated every word. The disinheritance papers, the 28 million, the Cayman Trust, the gym conversion. Silence on her end. "Then, you still have the forensic files." 3 years ago, right after Dad lost a folder of trust documents I needed for my taxes, I'd hired a quiet accounting firm in Tempe. They'd been feeding me copies ever since: bank transfers, shell company ledgers, emails between Ryan and the advisor. 70% of the puzzle was already in my safe. Sarah's voice steadied me. "You're 45 minutes from the studio. Get home, we finish this." I wiped my face, started the car, and merged back onto the empty interstate. The warehouse district was dead quiet when I rolled up the metal gate. I flipped on the work lights. Rows of shelves glowed, empty spots where pieces had shipped out weeks ago. A single kiln still radiated warmth from the day's firing. The place smelled of silica and success, not failure. I kicked off my shoes and went straight to the office corner. The safe sat behind a stack of blank slabs. Combination turn door swung open. 3 thick, expandable folders, 2 encrypted drives, 1 printed timeline I'd annotated in red pen. I spread everything across the big table where I usually trim bowls. Bank statements showed transfers starting 18 months ago. Round numbers, always on Fridays, always routed through the Caymans. Emails from Ryan to the advisor. "Make sure Blair never sees these." A draft of the new trust amendment with my name crossed out in black marker. I opened my laptop and pulled up the studio's real numbers, the ones my family had never asked for. Last fiscal year, 872,000 gross. This year on pace for 1.4 million. Private commissions from collectors in Dubai, London, and half the tech wives in San Francisco. All cash flow I'd kept quiet because I didn't need their approval. The clock on the wall read 3:12 a.m. 8 days until the party. 8 days to fill the last 30% of gaps, tie every loose end, and package it in a way they'd never forget. I brewed coffee strong enough to strip glaze and started making calls. Quiet ones. The forensic accountant answered on the first ring. He'd been waiting. A tax attorney I'd met at a gallery opening owed me a favor. By sunrise, I had appointments lined up and a delivery service booked for the 31st. I stood in the middle of the studio as light crept through the high windows. The shelves might look empty to them, but every missing vase, every sold-out collection had paid for the evidence now scattered across the table. They wanted to prove I was broke and broken. I was about to prove the opposite, and take the whole house of cards down with me. The decision settled in my chest like a perfectly centered lump of clay. No more hoping they'd change. No more second-guessing my worth. They had drawn the line in the sand. I was about to bury them in it. The next morning, I was already sitting in my tax attorney's office downtown. Elliot Grant wore the same navy suit he'd had on the night we met at an opening in Scottsdale. He slid a fresh legal pad across the glass table. "Show me what you've got." I dumped 3 folders and both drives in front of him. He whistled low. "You weren't kidding. This is a federal case wrapped in a bow. We spent 4 hours cross-referencing every transfer." He flagged the final missing pieces, 2 wire confirmations and the signed amendment page that locked me out. His paralegal pulled them from public filings before lunch. By 2 o'clock, the binder stood 200 pages thick, tabbed, highlighted, and notarized in triplicate. 2 encrypted USBs joined the package. 1 master, 1 backup. Elliot leaned back. "You sure you want to deliver this on the 31st, 11:30 sharp?" I said, right before the countdown. He didn't argue. Next stop was the custom wood shop in South Phoenix I'd used for gallery crates. The owner owed me for a $10,000 installation last spring. I sketched the box on butcher paper, black walnut blind dovetails, brass hinges, Harrington crest laser etched on the lid. Interior lined in charcoal suede recessed compartment for the binder, velvet tray for the drives. He promised completion in 6 days and discreet white glove delivery on the 31st. I paid cash and left. Back at the studio, I opened the group chat I'd kept alive since college. Sarah, Dylan, Mara, Leo, the 4 people who never once called my work a hobby. I typed, "Need the Red Rock house in Sedona for New Year's Eve. 10 of us max. Money, no object." Sarah replied in seconds, "Already booked it last month when you said you might bail on family." "You're welcome." Dylan sent a champagne emoji. Mara dropped the VRBO link. Leo just wrote, "We've got your back. Always." I booked private chefs, a mixologist, and a local band that played desert rock under the stars. The villa had a heated infinity pool overlooking the canyons, and enough bedrooms that no one had to share. I paid the full amount up front, no cancellation. Night fell. The warehouse lights buzzed overhead while I sat at the glazing table with a single sheet of heavy cream stock and my favorite fountain pen. I wrote slowly, every letter deliberate. Jonathan, Diane, Ryan, Nicole. You spent years telling me I would never be enough. Tonight, you'll learn what enough actually costs. The originals are already with the IRS and the family trust attorney. What you're holding are copies. Happy New Year. There will not be another one from me. Blair. I blotted the ink, folded the page once, and slid it into a matching cream envelope. Sealed it with red wax and the same crest that would be burned into the box lid. I walked the floor one last time, running my fingers along the cool shelves. The kiln ticked as it cooled from the final test firing. Every tool was in its place, every surface wiped clean. The studio had never looked more ready. I set the envelope on top of the binder, closed the suede flap, and locked the prototype box the woodworker had dropped off that afternoon. It weighed exactly 11 pounds, heavy enough to feel like judgment. For the first time in years, my hands weren't shaking. Each step had landed exactly where it needed to. The clay was centered, the walls pulled high, the rim finished clean. All that remained was the fire. I turned off the lights, set the alarm, and walked out into the warm desert night. 8 days felt like plenty. New Year's Eve arrived. Back at the house on Cactus Road, the desert mansion glittered like a mirage under a sky already black and star-drunk. A convoy of black SUVs and white Rolls-Royces crawled up the half-mile driveway, headlights sweeping across saguaros wrapped in tiny white lights. Valets in crisp white jackets sprinted between cars' doors, slamming in perfect rhythm. A crimson carpet unrolled from the motor court to the double-height bronze doors lined on both sides by towering torches that hissed and flared in the cool December air. Inside, the temperature was set to 72, but the energy felt volcanic. The DJ, flown in from Los Angeles, stood on a raised platform of smoked mirror-white headphones, glowing, dropping a custom remix that made the crystal chandeliers tremble. 3 bars glowed like altars, one poured only $19.96. Dom Perignon from Jeroboam's. Another served aged Japanese whiskey in hand-cut glasses. The third mixed cocktails that smoked with dry ice and flashed neon under black light. Women in liquid gold and midnight sequins spun across the acrylic floor laid over the infinity pool. Every step sent ripples of colored light beneath their heels. Diane moved through the crowd like royalty, gold silk column gown, catching every strobe diamonds at her throat, scattering light like paparazzi flashes. She laughed too loud, touched too many arms, repeated the same line to every new face. Biggest party we've ever thrown. Everyone who matters is here tonight. Jonathan stood beneath the massive iron chandelier in the cigar lounge, Cuban smoke curling around his head, while he promised first-look deals on the Dubai Marina and the Vegas high-rise. Ryan worked the investors in his midnight blue, peak lapel tuxedo voice, smooth eyes already scanning for the next handshake. Nicole posed on the grand staircase with her influencer pack phone held high diamond choker flashing each time the ring light popped. A 75-inch screen dominated the far wall above the double-sided fireplace, cycling slow-motion drone footage of the mansion at sunset. The countdown clock beneath it read 11:27 p.m. when the front doors opened one last time. A courier in a tailored black suit and white gloves stepped inside carrying a single object, a black walnut box, brass hinges gleaming, the Harrington crest laser-etched dead center on the lid. Security recognized the pre-approved vendor code and waved him straight through. He set the box on the white marble console beneath a 7-foot arrangement of white orchids, and King Protea bowed once and disappeared. Diane spotted it instantly. Her smile sharpened. "Oh my goodness, everyone look. Our little Potter finally remembered us." She clapped manicured hands like she'd just won something. Blair sent a gift, phones rose in a wave. She carried the box to the center of the living room herself, heels clicking, placing it on the ottoman as if unveiling a trophy. Nicole snatched the thick cream ribbon. "Probably another lopsided bowl will hide in the guest bath." She yanked. The lid lifted with a soft magnetic sigh, charcoal suede lining, a sealed cream envelope with red wax, a 200-page black binder, 2 matte black USB drives nestled in velvet. Ryan rolled his eyes, already half drunk on victory. $10 says it's a sob story video begging to come home. He grabbed one drive, shoved it into the media hub beneath the screen. The drone footage vanished. The room lights dimmed automatically for the surprise presentation. Page 1 filled the wall in crisp 4K wire confirmation, $28,000, Susan dollar. Grand Cayman account, 4009 887. Page 2, email thread titled, "Finalize removal of BH before 12/31. Page 3, trust amendment with Jonathan Harrington and Ryan Harrington signatures in bold blue. Page 4, IRS Form 211 whistleblower acknowledgement stamped, received. The music kept thumping for 3 full seconds before someone killed it. Silence crashed down like a guillotine. Nicole's scream ripped through the hush. "Oh my God, we're screwed." Her champagne flute slipped from manicured fingers and exploded into 1,000 crystal shards across the travertine. She stared at the screen as if it might bite her. Diane took one step back, gold gown suddenly too tight. Her knees buckled. 2 hedge fund wives lunged too late. Her head hit the ottoman corner with a dull thud before hands caught her shoulders. Someone shouted for ice. Jonathan stood rooted, face the color of printer paper, eyes locked on his own signature blown up 10 feet wide. The vein in his temple throbbed so hard it looked ready to burst. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The screen auto-cycled on a 30-second loop Elliot had built just for this moment, account numbers, transfer dates, the advisor's notes, the line that read, "Submitted to Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation Division." A tech billionaire in the back whispered, "That's felony stuff." His wife already had her phone out recording. Ryan lunged for the remote, tripped over Nicole's discarded heels, sent it skittering across the floor. He scrambled after it on all fours while the loop kept rolling. Guests stepped back, forming a perfect circle of judgment. Nicole spun toward the nearest exit and found it blocked by a wall of tuxedos and sequins, every phone pointed at her like a weapon. Her mascara started its descent in perfect black rivers. Diane came to on the floor, gasping, clutching Jonathan's ankle. He finally found his voice raw and ragged. "Turn it off. For the love of God, turn it off." A staff member yanked the drive, but the video had already auto-uploaded to 30 private stories and one very public Dropbox link. The countdown clock hit 11:59:40. No one moved toward the terrace for the $40,000 fireworks show. The desert wind rattled the 40-foot glass walls. 80 of the most powerful people in Arizona stood frozen, watching the Harrington empire crack wide open in real time. And 2 hours north, under a different sky, I lifted my glass to the moon and waited for the phones to start ringing. My phone started exploding at 11:57 p.m., exactly 3 minutes before the world flipped upside down for them. I was standing barefoot on the warm sandstone terrace of the Sedona Villa, red rock cathedrals glowing blood orange under the moon. The infinity pool shimmered turquoise, reflecting 1,000 fairy lights strung through the mesquite trees. Our private chef had just carried out the last course caviar spoons and gold leaf-dusted chocolate spheres, and the mixologist was free-pouring 2008 Cristal into vintage coupe glasses that caught the light like prisms. Nicole's name flashed first, the contact photo, still her from 5 years ago, laughing in a bikini on a yacht. I let it ring until voicemail swallowed it. Ryan's followed 30 seconds later. Same fate. Diane's call came next. Her face frozen in a Botox-smooth smile from some charity ball. I watched the screen pulse against the teak table and did nothing. Jonathan's name appeared last, no photo, just the word Dad in all caps. I swiped accept, tapped speaker, and held the phone high so every person on the terrace could hear. Sarah, Dylan, Mara, Leo, and the rest of our 10-person chosen family formed a loose semicircle behind me. Champagne flutes paused halfway to their lips. The roar that came through the speaker nearly blew it out. "Blair, you psychotic, ungrateful little..." He used words I'd never heard from him before. The terrace went dead quiet except for the faint thump of the band inside warming up for the countdown. Someone behind me actually laughed, one sharp bark that echoed off the canyon walls. Diane's voice shoved its way in next, high-pitched and cracking. "Baby, baby, please pick up, please, come home. We can say it was a hoax, we can fix everything, you're still our daughter." Nicole screamed over her raw and animal. "You jealous, talentless bitch. You just destroyed everything we worked for." Ryan tried the measured approach, voice shaking with barely contained panic. "Every top firm in the country is already drafting cease and desists. You'll be in federal prison by spring." Jonathan again, colder now, the businessman trying to bargain. "Name your number. 10 million, 20. Whatever it takes to make this disappear." I waited until the chaos on the other end ran out of oxygen. The wind off the canyon carried the scent of juniper and freedom. I brought the phone closer to my mouth and spoke slow, clear, Arctic. "Listen to me, because this is the last time any of you will ever hear my voice." The moment that box opened, the Harrington family died. Not wounded, not sleeping, dead and buried. I kept every transfer, every email, every forged page. The IRS has the originals. Your partners have the copies. There is no negotiation table. There is no fix. There is no more daughter, no more sister, no more safety net. You are strangers now. And strangers don't get second chances. Diane wailed something incoherent about grandchildren she would never meet. Nicole shrieked that I would burn in hell. Ryan threatened to leak my studio finances as if I had anything left to hide. Jonathan tried one final time, voice cracking. "You'll regret this for the rest of your life." I smiled at the moon. "No, You will. I ended the call. The screen went black. I powered the phone completely off, pried out the SIM card with my thumbnail, and flicked it into the pool. It vanished with a tiny plink, swallowed by turquoise light. Sarah handed me a fresh flute, eyes shining. The band leader counted us in from inside the glass doors. 10, 9, 8. We shouted the numbers together, voices bouncing off cathedral rock. At 3, our private pyrotechnic team ignited the first shell. At 1, the sky detonated gold waterfalls, violet chrysanthemums, crimson hearts that bloomed and dripped like slow fire. The canyon walls turned molten red, then gold, then white. Leo threw both arms around my shoulders and yelled something happy I couldn't hear over the thunder. Mara jumped into the pool, fully dressed, sequins flashing like fish scales. Dylan's drone caught everything in 4K for no audience except us. I raised my glass to the explosions overhead and drank until the bubbles burned my throat. The champagne tasted like victory, like oxygen, like the first day of the rest of my life. Much later, when the fires in the outdoor pits had burned low and the others had drifted inside to crash on sectionals and guest beds, I stayed on the terrace alone. The canyons were silent again, ancient and unmoved. I leaned against the warm stone railing and spoke into the dark soft enough that only the desert could hear. Happy New Year, Harringtons. Enjoy the consequences. 4 months later, the first certified letter from the IRS landed on the marble console in the foyer of the Cactus Roadhouse. The return address read, Department of the Treasury, Large Business and International Division. Jonathan signed for it with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. Inside, a notice of deficiency for unreported offshore income totaling $28 million. Penalties 75% fraud assessment plus compounded interest. Grand total due $21,412,000 and change. Payment deadline 90 days. 2 weeks after that, the Dubai Sovereign Fund canceled the joint venture letter of intent for the new marina resort. A single-line email. In light of recent regulatory concerns, we are withdrawing. The Vegas group followed 48 hours later, citing reputational risk. 2 projects, $400 million in future revenue gone overnight. Ryan lasted exactly 9 more days as CFO. The board convened an emergency session and voted him out unanimously. Security escorted him from the building with a banker's box and his Harvard diploma. His LinkedIn stayed frozen on open to new opportunities for weeks. Nicole's husband filed for divorce the same month. His attorney attached the Cayman Trust documents to the petition, claiming half the hidden assets were marital property. The judge froze every account with her name on it, pending forensic tracing. Country club memberships lapsed. The Range Rover got repossessed in the club parking lot, while she lunched with women who now pretended not to see her. Diane's social calendar turned into a graveyard. The charity gala co-chairs removed her name from the invitation. The Phoenix Art Museum board quietly accepted her resignation. Text chains went silent. The only notifications she received were, "So-and-so has left the group." Her daily tennis foursome dissolved without a single phone call. Grandmother Vivian summoned the 3 of them to her ranch in Paradise Valley. At 91, she still sat ramrod straight in her leather wingback. She slid revised estate documents across the coffee table. Jonathan, Diane, Ryan, and Nicole were now listed under a single line intentionally omitted. Everything, the ranch, the commercial holdings, the foundation, rerouted to distant cousins and 3 animal rescue charities. Vivian's parting words were simple. You tried to steal from your own blood. Blood remembers. The house itself went on the market 6 weeks later. The listing photos showed the same marble console, the same infinity pool, the same red rock views. Only now priced 22% below comps. Buyers circled like vultures, lowballing because everyone in town knew the story. Jonathan aged 10 years in 4 months. The silver at his temples turned white. Diane started taking Valium at lunch. Ryan moved into a 2-bedroom condo near Camelback and stopped answering the door. Nicole flew to a wellness retreat in Costa Rica and never came back. The Harrington name disappeared from new building cranes. Old signs came down. New letterhead got printed without the family crest. The empire didn't collapse in a single night. It bled out slowly, publicly, painfully. And every step of the way, the desert stayed quiet. By the end of summer, I was on a one-way flight to New York, with 6 crates of greenware in the cargo hold. The scandal had done what years of quiet grinding never could. It put my name in places I never paid to reach. A small show I'd done in a Phoenix warehouse the previous winter, 12 pieces invite only, suddenly resurfaced on every art blog from London to Seoul. Headlines that once said Harrington heiress exposes family fraud now carried second lines, and she's one of the most exciting ceramicists working today. 3 weeks after the story broke, an email arrived from Elena Moreau, director of Gallery Vert in Soho. Subject line: "We would be honored." She had flown to Phoenix the next day, walked through my studio in 5-inch heels without flinching at the clay dust, and offered an exclusive 3-year contract on the spot. Rent on a 3,200 square foot raw loft on West 26th was covered. 2 gas kilns, a slab roller, and a ventilation system money couldn't normally buy were already installed when I landed. I moved in September. The Hudson glittered outside floor-to-ceiling windows every morning while I threw the first new forms of my life without a last name I hated. Collectors who once ghosted me now begged for waiting list spots. Museums requested loans. My prices tripled, then tripled again. None of it felt like revenge. It simply felt like gravity finally working in my favor. One gray November afternoon, a certified envelope arrived at the gallery desk. Return address: a law firm in Scottsdale. Sender: Jonathan Harrington. The receptionist signed for it and brought it upstairs. I recognized the handwriting on the front, still perfect, still arrogant. I didn't open it. I walked to the post office on 28th, wrote refused, returned to sender in black marker across the seal, and dropped it back into the system. That was the last time any of them would ever reach me. Winter came early. On the first real snow day, I loaded the new 45 cubic foot kiln for its inaugural firing. 40 pieces tall bottles with cracked desert glazes, massive platters in iron red and ash white bowls so thin they rang like bells. I set the program for cone 10, closed the heavy door, and pressed start. The elements glowed orange through the peephole. Outside, snow muffled the city to a hush. Inside, the kiln roared like a quiet dragon. I poured a single mug of coffee, walked to the window, and watched flakes drift over the Hudson. My phone sat on the sill screen black for weeks. I picked it up, held the power button until the apple appeared one last time, then let it die completely. No ceremony, no speech, just the soft click of a chapter closing forever. The kiln climbed past 2,000 tolerant degrees. I thought about every person who ever told me I was wasting my life in the mud. I thought about the little girl who used to hide in the pottery shed behind the mansion because it was the only place no one followed. I thought about the woman standing here now. Studio paid for shows, sold out through 2028, name on waiting lists instead of inheritance clauses. And I understood the only truth that matters: you don't need their table when you've learned to build your own. You don't need their approval when your work speaks louder than their money ever did. You don't need their love when you finally give it to yourself. The kiln beeped. Cycle complete. I opened the door hours later to perfect shelves of fire-kissed clay, stronger, harder, more beautiful than anything they ever touched. I smiled at the glow, whispered to no one and to everyone: this is what happens when you stop asking to be let in and start burning the door down. That was the day Blair Harrington disappeared for good. And Blair began.